0.4. So what we can say that the pH of the blood is near to the neutral point because water is a neutral and the pH of the blood is slightly alkaline. So that's why if we want to taste a water will not give any taste, but blood always give a slight alkaline taste, which will be a slight salty type. So its taste is a salty type. So this is the thing. So next is the temperature. So our body always regulate all the organ system in the body at a particular temperature, which is known as 37.4 degree Celsius and 100 nearly 98.6 degree Fahrenheit. So that's why the temperature of the body is regulated, and it is not regulated by a single mechanism. It is regulated by the number of mechanisms, likely the presence of we can say water in the body, and if a body excrete or more water in the form of a sweat secretion, it want to tend to become cool. So what we can say, the viscosity I have discussed, that blood viscosity is 4 to 5 times more viscous. Now, why it is viscous? Simply around 98% of the blood is a water, but there are some solute components which are present inside the blood. Those solute components are a type of cells or a type of amino acid or a type of proteins which are present in the blood. Now, if I compare both the male and female, depending upon the body size, the blood volume in case of male is slightly more as compared to the female. So this doesn't mean there would be any kind of genetic reason, but it is simply due to the body size and due to the body functioning, and the amount would be varied. So this is the important. Now, if I will say what are the different type of functions which are obeyed, which are to be played by the blood. Now, the first function is the transportation. Now, what transportation mean? Previously, I have discussed that oxygen can enter from the nostril to the lungs, but lungs cannot provide directly oxygen to the body cells because there is a link between the lungs and the body cells, which is called as a blood, because the blood carry oxygens from the alveoli, and then it sends the oxygen, then it provides the oxygens to the tissues of the body, and carbon dioxide, which is the metabolic part of the cells and tissue, is carried back by the blood toward the lungs so that it could be excreted out. Now, what happen if this function will not be well played by the blood? Because if carbon dioxide will not properly be removed from the blood side, then what will be happen? That carbon dioxide will start to accumulate, and that will alter the saturation of oxygen and carbon dioxide. Many a times, I will give an example here, that whenever a patient is suffering from a severe kind of sepsis, severe kind of blood infection, in that case, sometime doctor always analyze that what is the saturation limit of the oxygen and carbon dioxide, which is considered to be beneficial if it lie around 94 or 95%. Now, reduction of this saturation towards 60%, 50%, and 40% leads to be a one of the big emergency condition, and that is also a one of the big challenge for the medical researcher or a medical staff. Now, again coming to the metabolites, not only the carbon dioxide is one of the metabolite. Whenever the cells and the tissue, they utilize the nutrients what we take, what the food we intake that contain amino acids, that contain various type of proteins, that contain a fat, that contain some other vitamins. So number of things which are present being absorbed from the food by the body, they are carried up by the blood toward the different cells and tissues. Now once these cells and tissues they utilize these type of the nutrients, the metabolic waste which come out in the form of a urea, uric acid, creatinine or other nitrogenous substances, they are need to be eliminated out from the body, and this only happen with the support of this only happen by the transportation through the blood from the cells and tissue toward the other organs like kidney or like some skin or like some respiratory system if we want to expel the gaseous. Now instead of this, it play an important role to transport the various type of hormones because sometimes the glands which secrete their hormones to the ducts and those ducts carry the hormone from the one area to the another area. Likely, I will give a example here that the liver secrete a bile and the bile is required for the emulsification of the fat. Now that means the fat which we take in the food is being emulsified by the bile, and bile is carried out from the liver toward the small intestine by the presence of a duct which is called as a hepatic duct. Now see such type of the gland which is called as a sometimes it is called as exocrine and endocrine because play both of the functions, but my mean to say that endocrine glands are called as a ductless gland, so that means they do not have their own ducts. So I will give example of adrenal gland, that means which is present a triangular shaped gland over the upper side of the kidney, and it helps in the secretions of the adrenaline which is called as a epinephrine from the adre- adrenal gland, and it is secreted into the blood. Now that means blood will carry the adrenaline from the one part of the body to the another part of the body. So not only this, dopamine, noradrenaline, and so many other hormones which are carried up by the blood from the one area to the another area, if they are excreted by the endocrine glands which are called as a ductless glands because they do not have their ducts. Now another function which is important is transport nutrient from the GIT tract because whenever we take a food, the food will be teared and breaked by the teeth, and it will move down toward the esophagus, followed by stomach, followed by small intestine. So that means ultimately the food is absorbed from the lower part of the stomach as well as from the small intestine, and that nutrients which are carried up by the blood from the area of absorption toward the area of utilization, that means cells and the tissue. Now not only this, it also helps to regulate the pH. Now similarly previously I have discussed with you that pH is also maintained by the respiratory system, it is also maintained by the skin, and along with that the pH is also maintained by the blood because pH depends upon the presence of hydrogen ion. So this balance is maintained by the blood because it will use excessive hydrogen to form a bicarbonic acid, then will be converted to water and carbon dioxide. So there are so many pathways through which it can be eliminated out. Other than that, the blood helps to regulate the temperature because it is constituted of a water. Now, whenever there is a need, a water can be eliminated from the body so that a temperature can be controlled. I can give a one of the another example, which is not a physiological condition, which is we can say a type of disease condition, in known as severe dehydration. Dehydration means excessive loss of water from the body. It could be due to the vomiting, it could be due to the diarrhea. So such type of condition immediately cause elimination of excessive water more than a normal limit, and these are the pathological type of the situation. Now, another than that, there is a protection. Now, this is the important part because in our body there is a need to protect the body from the external viruses, from the external microorganisms, and from the external particles which unfortunately enters through the various routes like nose, like mouth, like skin, or some other like you in us. So many routes are there through which an organism can be entered to the body. So there are number of example like dengue or like malaria. So such type of the organism, once they enter into the body up to a certain limit, our body protect against such type of these viruses and bacteria by secreting a special type of defense force which is called as a WBCs, which are called as a leukocytes. Now, these WBCs, they start to fight against these type of the organism, and they also help to carry it the phagocytosis process because they release a special type of the cells which are called as in macrophages. Now, these macrophages are responsible for the phagocytosis. Another than that, these blood contains some clotting factors which are required to prevent the excessive loss of blood. Either it could be during a minor or a major injury. Now, whenever the injury happens at the injured area, the blood cells they start to synthesize some of the clotting factors, and those clotting factors help to form a clot and thereby prevent the loss of the blood from the body. Now coming to the blood, which is constituted of a solid as well as some other parts. Now depending upon this, we can say the blood is consisted of a cellular composition and it is consisted of a non-cellular composition. The cellular composition indicates the formed element and the non-cellular composition indicates the blood plasma and some other proteins. Now, in case of formed elements, the cells which are present are RBCs, WBCs, and platelets because they constitute around 45% of the total part of the blood because these are the solute part of the blood. Now, in this way, these type of cells which very easily you can say once they are degraded after their lifespan, they again be formed and they maintain their consistent level so that they can play the major functions in the body. Another is the non-cellular components. The non-cellular component of the blood indicate that there is a presence of 55% of the blood which is constituted of ions. So the ions which are present are are plasma proteins and the some other ions like hydrogen ions, like sodium ions, like potassium ions, like chloride ions. Because not only a single ions, many ions are present and which help to maintain the osmolarity of the blood. Now because it is essential like pH, the blood should be having a fixed osmolarity balance because I have discussed that in case of severe dehydration, what happen? there would be a excessive loss of the liquid part of the blood, and the solid part will be remain, which is responsible for the hyperosmolality, that means which alter the osmolality balance. So that means the water part is equally essential along with the solute parts. So all these cells along with some protein which are called as a plasma protein. I will give example of the plasma protein like albumin, like globulin, like alpha 1 glycoprotein, or so many the type of the proteins which are present in the blood, and these proteins are responsible for their number of functions, because not only the oxygen, not only these type of the substances, but these protein help to regulate, help to carry some of the drugs from the one area of absorption to the target place called as a receptor. Now, why I say that albumin which carry acidic type of the drug, diglobulin which carry basic type of the drug, and alpha 1 glycoprotein carry acidic as well as neutral type of the drug. So that means these type of the protein, instead of constituting the solid part, instead of constituting the solute part, they also help to carry the drugs and their metabolite at the receptor site, so they can produce their action for which they are being be taken. Now see here, I have explored all the blood and what are the components of the blood, because blood is constituted of a plasma and is a formed element. Now, in the plasma, the major components are, or the substances present are, the amino acids, and which is a nitrogenous, which is breaked to form a nitrogenous waste, then the nutrients, then the electrolytes, then the proteins, gaseous, then albumin I have discussed to carry the drug as well as some other factor, fibrinogen which is a part of the clotting mechanism, and then globulin which is a major protein, not to carry the drugs only, it is a part of hemoglobin, because globulin is a part along with the heme to form a hemoglobin. Now the next part is the formed element. The form, they are called as a formed element because they are having their fixed lifespan, and after their lifespan they are again be resynthesized, reformed in the body, and they are of three types, two types, that is called as a granulocytes and agranulocytes. Now the granulocyte part is consisted of neutrophils and basophils, eosinophils, because the name which represent that somewhat is a neutral. Neutral never take any type of the dyes. Basophil a basic type, eosinophil with a which carry some of the acidic eosin dyes. So on the basis of that, they were being differentiated. And another part are called as a granulocyte, which are the major type of the enemy, which are the major type of our army, which is a major type of our defense force, which are called as a lymphocytes and a monocytes. So that means they are being be further differentiated as a T lymphocyte and a B lymphocyte depending upon the area from which they are being be liberated out. They are being be released. They are called as a T lymphocyte if they are released by the thymus gland, and they are called as a B lymphocytes if they are released by the bone marrow. So that all these, you can say, the formed and the plasma elements, they are present in the whole blood. Now, coming to the next. what happen, that how we can differentiate a plasma and how we can differentiate a serum part of the body. Why they are equally important? Because I have discussed that in case of severe infections, what we can say sepsis like condition, in that condition, the plasma is the major part which carry some plasma proteins, which carry some antibodies, and that plasma is being be a powerful weapon which can kill number of microorganisms and which can provide a defense power to the body. So I have shown here a procedure how they are separating the plasma. Firstly, what we do, we just have to separate, we just have to take a blood from the large veins. After once the blood will be taken from the large vein, then it is added to a test tube. Now see, there are two methods. The method, I can say, previously in the old time, and what we can say now in the some or somewhere, they are using some of the anticoagulants. Now, what they put the anticoagulants, and after putting the anticoagulant, they add the blood, what they have taken out from the body, and then they centrifuge at a specific speed. The normally the speed which is used for the centrifugator is around 5,000 to 10,000 for a appropriate time. That could be 7 minute, 5 minute, 10 minute, like that. Now, so that we can easily get a separated plasma which will be free from the type of the blood cells. Now, and this was the thing that the many of the scientists during the old time, they were using a EDTA, they were using a heparin or such type of the substance that were being used so that a plasma can be separated. But nowadays, in the medical laboratory, they are using a fluorinated tubes. Now, using those fluorinated tubes, they they normally prevent the coagulation of the blood. Now see here, after the centrifugation, what they are getting in the test tube, they are showing that plasma is present in the upper supernatant layer of the test tube, and after then there would be a buffy coat which is constituted of a platelet, and on the lower side, there is a presence of a whole blood, and which contain some RBCs and which contain sometimes WBCs are also present. So this is the simple mean that the peoples they separate the plasma because the plasma is used for a number of time whenever the patient will suffer from a critical condition, whenever a doctor think that a transfusion of blood would not be beneficial because patient need a immune power, so to reconstitute or to push the immune power of the body, the plasma is directly be transfused, directly be given to the patient, which is separated from the blood of the another patient. So this is what I can say plasma, because here you can see what plasma exactly is here. Plasma is a straw colored, slightly alkaline, viscous fluid. I previously discussed that blood is having a viscosity of around 4 to 5 times more than the water, but this plasma is a more viscous as compared to the blood, but I can say 5 to 6 times more viscous as compared to the blood, and it contains a solute, a protein, and a water. Now, the plasma proteins which are present, they are albumin, globulin, heparin, and some coagulating factors. Nitrogenous waste are present, urea, uric acid, ammonia, and creatinine, along with some inorganic substances like bicarbonate, chloride, phosphate, sodium, potassium, calcium, magnesium, etc. So that what you can say that these type of proteins are required to the body so that if the body is non-functional in severe infections. Now next we go to the serum, which is what is that the blood contain a serum as well as a plasma. So if we say that we keep the cell, then what we can say that it is a clear fluid and in this case for the separation of the serum anticoagulants are not required. Just what you have to do, you have to take the blood and you put the blood into a apple drop or into a test tube, then keep the test tube in the centrifuge and then start to centrifuge at a particular rpm revolutions per minute that you can adjust it as 5 to 10,000 for 5 to 10 minutes and then it can be it can leads to the separation of the serum from the plasma. What you can see here in the one of the test tube, once you centrifuge the plasma will be lowered down and the plasma will be accumulated at the bottom side and serum will be present on the top side. Now the serum which is also equally important like a plasma because serum contain all the types of the electrolytes. So electrolytes are required to the body for maintaining the pH and for maintaining the physiological functions of the body. Now, in this case, these electrolytes along with antibodies and and some hormones which are present. So now what you can say serum does not contain a white blood cells, red blood cells and platelets or the clotting factors. So what we can say the fluid which is free from the blood cells or the clotting factor is simply called as a serum and this is required to the body. Now, what are the formed elements which are present in the blood? The formed elements are the erythrocyte, which are called as a red blood cells. They are called as a red because they contain a one of the protein which is called as a hemoglobin. Now, due to the presence of the hemoglobin in the blood they are being be appeared as a red in color. Now, due to this red color, this is due to the presence of hemoglobin and it is a iron containing pigment along with a protein part. Now, platelets are the cellular fragments and they are equally important. In the coming slides, I will discuss with you individually what are the functions of these cells. Now see in the diagrams it has been shown that which type of structure of these cells can be analyzed. Now there are granulocyte. I have discussed that they are neutrophil, eosinophil, and basophil. Structurally, the structure contain a granules, and depending upon the presence of the granules, they are differentiated from the monocyte and lymphocyte. And because lymphocyte and monocyte, they are called as a granulocytes. So these are the formed elements which are present inside the blood. Now coming to first the erythrocyte. Now simply if if we say these are the biconcave disc shaped cells. Now see the cells are too much elastic because you can imagine that blood always flow from the large arteries followed by the small arteries followed by the small arterioles followed by vein and venules, so that blood has to travel from the large area toward the small area. So now due to this reason, the blood cells are flexible in their shape so that they can adjust their shape accordingly whenever it is required to travel from the large area to the small area. Now, in this case, we can say that due to this flexibility, their shape is changed. But there is a one another condition which is called as a sickle cell anemia, which is being linked to the deficiency of glucose 6 phosphate dehydrogenase. Now, in this case, which is a genetic problem, in that case, what happen that the shape of the RBCs become sickle, and once the shapes of the RBCs become sickle, sometimes they are joined or they are present in the form of a clumps, and they sometimes cause choking of the arteries, or they are not be flexible and cannot move from the narrow area or the narrow blood vessels. Now, due to this reason, which is one of the condition, which is one of the problem, a disease related to the shape of the non-flexibility of the RBCs. Now, this is for the knowledge that everybody and students of the graduate or the diploma or nursing, they know that, or medical student, they know that the RBC's lifespan is 120 days and short because of the lack of nuclei. This is one of the important thing that nuclei is not present in the RBCs. And I always says to the student that this is by the blessing of God. Suppose if the lifespan of the RBCs would be 1 day, what will happen? You cannot transfuse the blood from the one patient to the another patient because it is only transfused because of the presence or because of the lifespan of 3 to 4 months for the RBCs, and due to the presence of antibodies in the blood or the proteins in the blood which are required for the growth. Now, this is simply, I can say, daily nearly per second I am say that around 2 million of the RBCs, they are degraded and they are again be reformed. So, but the destruction rate, which is a too imaginary that you cannot easily be fed on this thing, that it happen with the human that the RBCs, they are degraded at a too high amount, that is approximate 2 million per second. So that the normal range of RBCs is varied among the male as well as female, because the RBCs in the male is approximate from 5.2 to 6.5 million, and the RBCs amount in case of female is approximate from 4.23 or 4.2 or 4.3 to 5.4 or 5.5 million. So this is the range of the total number of RBCs which are present in our body. Now see what are the different functions of the RBCs. As previously I have cleared about the RBCs function, that not only they have to carry the oxygen or to remove the carbon dioxide, they even carry number of the drugs also. Recent research area from the last few years, they had targeted the anti-cancer drug using the red blood cells. So, what was the thinking of the scientist that the RBCs are present in all the part of the body, and whenever there will be any cancerous condition in the any part of the body, these RBCs traveled from the one area, and the hemoglobin of RBC is utilized by the cancerous cells itself. So that means whenever we pack the RBCs along with the anti-cancer drug, they will rupture at the cancerous site, drug will be released, and once the drug will be released, that cancerous cell easily can be treated, the cancer easily can be reduced or the reversed. So such type of the thing are being be used by the researcher, but I always say it is not easy to entrap the drug in the RBCs. It is not easy because it is equally a problem that we should be confirmed that whether the drug is is entered to the RBCs or not, because we can simply say that we are injecting the drug which will enter into the RBC, then RBC will carry. But this is the thing that how much drug is loaded in the RBC, this is a critical question. Now, see, instead of this, they make the acid base balance because our body work on the acid base balance, which is called as a buffer balance, which help to resist the change in pH. So that's why this is the one of the capability, this is one of the function of the blood to maintain the acid and base balance, and another in turn to maintain the viscosity due to the presence of some type of proteins. Now, I always say that blood should not be too much viscous and blood should not be too less viscous. If it would become too much viscous, it will not travel easily, and once it will not travel easily, it can lead to some pathological condition that are called as angina, that can cause reduce the cardiac functioning, that can be responsible sometimes for myocardial infarction, and on the opposite side, if the viscosity of the blood is too less, then it can cause bleeding from the any internal area of the body. So that's why to maintain the viscosity, it is essential part, and this role is also be played by the RBCs in our body, because you can see from this diagram the RBCs they carry the oxygen and liberate out the carbon dioxide. So another thing which is important, that RBCs are being synthesized in our body. Now, this is one of the knowledgeable matter that that many students may didn't know, that we say that the RBCs are formed in the shaft of a long bone. We can say RBCs are formed in the bone marrow of the bone, because there are two type of bone marrow which are present in the bones. One is called as a red bone marrow, another is called as a yellow or a slight brown bone marrow. Now the difference is there whenever the baby is having a small age or during the 2 month of the gestation, the third month to the seventh, these RBCs are being synthesized by the liver and spleen, and at the same time these RBCs are dead, are decayed inside the spleen. The spleen is one of the graveyard of the body, and that's why the spleen has to play a important task, important we can say function during this small age. But whenever the age is from the onward to the 20th week, then the function of the liver and the spleen is carried up by the bone marrow, and these cells are being synthesized in the bone marrow. So similarly, here I have shown that how the bone marrow secrete a one of the stem cell which is called as a hematopoietic stem cells. Hematopoietic stem cells, they are pluripotent cells. So there is a two term which is very commonly used. One is called as a pluripotency and another is called as a totipotency. Totipotency, it is the power of a one cell to divide the into a same cell, but pluripotency is the power of a one cell to divide into a different type of cells. So what you can say that the hematopoietic stem cells, they are a type of pluripotent stem cells because they are differentiated into two major type of the cell. One is called as a myeloid progenitor cells and another is called as a lymphoid progenitor cells. Now the lymphoid simply indicate that they are T and B. If secreted by thymus gland, then T type. If secreted by the bone marrow, then B type. Now another is the myeloid progenitor cells. These are again the pluripotent cells because they differentiated to develop into a different types of the cells like erythrocyte, monocytes, neutrophils, basophils, eosinophils, platelets. Now here it is a one of the important thing that the erythropoiesis, which is a process in which RBCs are synthesized, they are in the form of a immature cells because once the erythro cells of the RBCs, they are be converted from the myeloid progenitor cells. They are immature type of the cells and they take approximate 3 to 4 days to become immature, and after once they become mature they are called as a erythrocytes. So that means their number can be increased or decreased depending upon the pathological conditions. So sometime you can see here from the graph, it is clear that during the gestational age and the liver and the spleen become functional to produce ARBCs. But see here, after the 15th to 60 of the age, in term of years, the bone marrow as well as the bone marrow present in the vertebral column, vertebrae, in the sternum, in the ribs, and in the femur are responsible for the synthesis and for the maturation of the RBCs. So how cycle would be fast? That I discussed that around 2 millions of the RBCs are degraded and reformed in a second. So what you can imagine that what is the rate of catabolism and anabolism here? Now again come to the leukocytes. So leukocytes mean they are called as a white blood cells. Previous we discussed a red blood cells because of the presence of a red substance heme, which is a iron containing pigment. They are called as a red. Another type of the cells do not contain any kind of the heme. They are called as a white. Their color is white and they are called as a white blood corpuscles. So white blood cells, they are colorless. I told you, no hemoglobin. They are nucleated. Nucleus is present. They are amoeboid in shape and phagocyte cells. That means They are responsible for the phagocytosis. Phagocytosis is the process whenever a one cell engulfs the another type of cells, or the process in which a one cell can be responsible for the eating of some debris or the waste material or the bacteria or the viruses. Now, this is the process of the phagocytosis. Now, due to the amoeboidal movement, they squeeze out the blood capillaries, and this is called as diapetesis. So this squeezing is equally important because these WBCs, by the process of phagocytosis, they sometimes engulf, eat some of the material which is just picked up, which is just adhere to the walls of the blood vessels. Now, their size is too small, that means in the size of a micrometer, which is 8 to 15 micrometer. Now, it is a too small size, and that cannot be visible to the naked eyes. And if we say the size is in micron, microscope is required to see that particular size. Now, what the number of WBCs are present in our body? It is equally important because many a time when the patient go for the laboratory analysis, they found that their WBC account was moved down from the 5,000, or it was more than the 9,000, and from this condition a doctor can easily analyze whether patient is suffering from any type of the disease condition or not, because a simple example which previously I discussed, that if your WBC cell count is below 5,000, in case of dengue condition which happen with the number of patients, and if your WBC count is more than 9,000, that we can say you are suffering from the systemic infections, you are suffering from the internal organ infections. So that's why the proportion number of 5,000 to 9,000 per cubic millimeter is essential to know that we are lying in the normal physiological condition. Now, after then, decrease in the number of WBC is called as a leukopenia. Leuko means WBC is leukocyte. Penia means decreased level of the leukocytes. Now, pathological increase in the is called as a WBC is called as a leukemia, and so you can easily know that in case of a blood cancer, the number of WBCs they are suddenly increased, and and the patient at the earlier stage, if they go for the laboratory analysis, once they analyze that the WBC's level is increased, and sometime at the earlier stage it is difficult to take the decision by the doctor whether the patient suffering from the cancer or other pathological condition, because if you want to know that leukemia is due to cancer, you should go for the cancer test, and you could go for the analysis of clusters of differentiations, CD4 cells, CD8 cells, like that. Now, the production of WBCs is known as a leukopoiesis. Leuko is WBC, poiesis is formation, and increase in the WBC is leukocytosis. Now, increase, this is the normal increase in the number. So, this is about the WBC, which are required to provide the defense power to the body. Now, coming to the next type of the cells, which are called as the granulocytes and agranulocytes. I have already discussed that If the granules are present in the cytoplasm part of the cell, then they are called as a granulocyte. Depending upon the staining technique that was used by the Graham et al., that he used some stain, and on the basis of the stain, he said that no stain neutral and eosin stain eosinophil and basic stain basophil. So this was the you can say a statement of one of the scientists, Graham et al. Now, after then a granulocyte, that means the cytoplasm is free from any kind of granules. So they are of called as a granulocyte. Now, the another condition these cells, which are called as a neutrophil, eosinophil, basophil, they are also analyzed by the doctor during the critical condition, during the pathological condition. If a patient is having a severe kidney infection, a liver infection, or a other organ infection, sometime the eosinophil and basophils they are present in the urine, and once they are being identified, then the doctor go for the you can say to analyze that which type of infection is there in the body. Now, coming to the leukocyte level in the blood, the normal range I have discussed around 4 5,000 to 9 to 11,000 cells per cubic millimeter square. Now, in case of leukopenia, it can be abnormally be reduced, and that would be also a one of the indication of the infection. Now, another type of the cells, as per the shape and as per the features, I will discuss here that the neutrophils they are having a nucleus with a 3 to 4 lobes, which is directly can easily be identified if you see these type of cell under microscope, and they are produced by the bone marrow because the region it will be same after once the person is having a age more than 20 22 weeks. Acidophils, basophil as per the dye which enter inside the cell so can easily be identified. Then there is a granulocyte. In case of agranulocyte, the granules are not present, and these are the smallest WBCs, and monocyte are the largest WBCs, and both play important function in our body because lymphocyte produce antibodies and monocyte ingest the microorganism by the process of like a macrophage, like a phagocytosis. So after then the last type of the cells which are called as the platelets. Now see structure was like a plate. They are you can say they are two whitened and they are two flat type. They are known as a platelet which are having a shape of like a disc, and their size is around 2 to 4 micron, and the platelet number is also equally important, similar like the RBCs and WBCs, and you can see here their normal range is 150,000 to 400,000. So the platelet number can easily be vary in case of a severe injury, and in case of bleeding conditions the platelet number is varied, and that's why the platelet are the important type of the cells which are required to the body for the blood clotting, because whenever a injury will happen, then there is a need so that to recover the injury, and preventing for the prevention of extra loss of blood, the platelets form a plug which is called as a platelet plug, and which is developed in the form of a fluid. Now, formation of a platelet. The process is called as a thrombopoiesis, and which is with the help of a one of the protein, one of the hormone, which is called as a thrombopoietin, and which is secreted by the kidney. Now see, they are again developed from the myeloid cells and then followed by blast, megakaryoblast, immature. When they are mature, become a megakaryocytes, and then ultimately develop to the platelets. Now, increase in the number of platelets is called as a thrombocytosis, which is a one of the critical condition that can leads to formation of clot in the internal blood vessel or in the internal organ of the body. So whenever they will form a clot, they can cause choking of the blood vessel or any of the area, and which can inhibit the you can say flow of the blood or the passage of the blood from the one area to the another area. So simultaneously decrease in the number of platelet is known as a thrombocytopenia. So that means this is the reduced number, and whenever you will see that the platelet number is reduced, and in such condition the chances of the bleeding are more. So that's why sometimes we infuse the patient with a blood, or sometimes we need to separate the platelet and then we have to infuse. Now, in this condition, you can say that the cells are developed into a platelet, and once they become mature, they start to travel through the blood. And whenever there will be any kind of injury, they very fastly travel toward the injury area and start to accumulate there and start to adhere to that particular area where there is a bleeding, so that the bleeding can be stopped and excessive blood loss cannot be happen. Now, platelets have been observed to play a role in the following, like maintaining the hemostasis. Now, in the previous first introductory part, I have discussed that how homeostasis is different from hemostasis because the terms are quite similar, but the meaning, but the output is totally a different. Homeo environment, hemo related to blood. So they are required to maintain the hemostasis. That means the proper amount of the iron and nutrient or the protein in the blood. They maintain the vascular integrity because whenever there will be internal injury, they will cover that injury and they will maintain the nomenclature of the vessels. After then, they are responsible for blood coagulation because they contain a blood coagulant proteins. Then they help in the thrombosis and embolism. Then in the inflammatory response, they contain some vasoactive amines. Now, I will give you example. Whenever there is injury in the body, there is a release of one of the amine, which is called, and one of the constrictory protein, which is called as a endothelin, which help in the constriction at the area of the injury. Then phagocytosis for engulfing the bacteria. Then they have their big role in atherosclerosis. Atherosclerosis is a medical condition which is called as a hardening of the arteries. Now, in this condition, they play a number of roles. Now, see here, once the platelet they are activated, and the activated platelet is formed along the fibrin. So when the blood vessel is damaged, no, simply you can see the platelet not only prevent the excessive loss of blood, they also help to prevent the excessive loss of blood cells, other cells like WBCs, or like RBCs, and also maintain the hemostasis. Now, there is an important topic which is related to the blood, which is called as anemia. So, anemia, so see, normally the RBCs and WBCs they are present in a normal range, and see what happen in the anemia. That means once the RBCs number is declined, so the patient will become anemic. So not only this, you can say that anemia indicate an without emia mean blood. So that means a person without a blood become anemic. Now, in this condition, what happened? The RBC level is declined. Now, previously we have discussed that the RBC level is 4.22 in male and female up to 6.2 or 6.5 millions, and now if their level is declined, ultimately the RBC contain hemoglobin, the level of hemoglobin would also be declined. And if it is declined, the blood cells number is reduced and the RBCs are unable to carry the oxygen. And if the oxygen will not be present to all the cells or all the tissues of the body, so what will happen? There is a condition which is called as a hypoxia. Hypoxia, hypo mean low, oxia mean oxygen, and this is the one of the medical condition related to the anemia. Now, the anemia is diagnosed as any condition whenever there is a decrease of RBC. So that now it can easily be analyzed. Not only you have to go for the laboratory testing. If you have number of symptoms, the symptom you feel a fatigue, you feel a tired, your body color is changed, because normally if we see our skin is having a little bit red color, but the anemic patient, their skin will become a light or sometime a yellow color, that indicates that patient is lacking a normal or a good number of the RBCs in the blood. Now see here, the symptoms of the anemia can easily be differentiated. On the left side, there is a normal hand, and on the right side, there is a anemic hand. So what we can say, that the red blood cell number is reduced in the anemia, and I have told you that person with a low number of RBC will get fatigue, will get tired very easily. And after then, if that person is going for the weightlifting to the gym, then again the weakness felt by the person will be more as compared to the normal person. If a person is having a low level of the RBCs, then the color of the skin will become yellow. And then if the patient do more and more work, then there will be irregular heartbeat, because heart can only work if there will be a proper supply of oxygen by the cells to the heart. But if in anemia the cells number is reduced, the proper oxygen will not be provided to the heart, and heart could may undergo hypoxia. And if it frequently happen day by day or after hours, then the patient feel a pain in the chest. Whenever the patient feel a pain in the chest, it is called as a angina. Now see, if it is related to the low oxygen level, the chest pain may be slight, and it will be appear during the time of work or during the time of a coitus. But if the chest pain is frequently felt and is not changed, in not be changed, you can say with the work or with the rest, that can be due to some other condition. It would be due to high viscosity of the blood. It would be due to the hypertriglyceridemia. It would be due to the hypercholesterolemia. It might be due to some number of other factors. So that's why the anemia can lead to chest pain. Now the another condition is called as a headache. Suppose if you are frequently feeling that I suffer always from the headache, then the patient should go for the diagnosis whether they are having a sufficient level of RBCs in the body or not. So this is important part. Now see which type of anemia is commonly appeared in the body. The one type of the anemia which is called as a iron deficiency anemia. So that means if there will be a deficiency of the iron in the body, and whenever there will be a deficiency of iron in the body, so iron is present in the heme, is present in the hemoglobin and bound with the hemoglobin and is responsible to carry the oxygen. So it is one of the essential mineral which is required to the body and which help to carry the oxygen with the help of RBCs. Now, the requirement of the iron in the body varies depending upon the activity, depending upon the gender, like male and female, not only gender, depending upon the age, like growing children or the adult person, or even though in case of women which are pregnant and non-pregnant. So, what I can say, if you want to if you want to say that the pregnancy condition, in that condition the woman need a more amount of iron, and if you say that you are at the age of growing, your body need a more amount of iron. Instead, the person who are who are who are adult or who are either a male and the female. So that's why in case of pregnancy, it is essential to give a extra iron so that we can maintain the growth of the baby healthy. So because it is required. Now see, iron is also required for our bone marrow to secrete or to produce a more number of cells. Likely, I have discussed that bone marrow is responsible for the for the productions of RBCs, WBCs, platelets, and in case of iron deficiency, it can lead to the low number of the cells in the body. What we can say, it would be due to the iron dietary deficiency, or it would be due to the malabsorption of the iron, because there are two conditions. You can take proper amount of iron, but your body is not absorbing and it is eliminating as such. And on the second condition, you are taking a low amount of the iron. So that's why in very common in a very common way, we says that iron is essential to be a part, which is a chromophoric type of the structure which is required to carry the oxygen. So this is equally essential. Now see, after then there is another condition which is called as a megablastic anemia. So megablastic anemia, which is the condition in which there is a low level of the folic acid. So, what we can say, if a person suffers from a deficiency of the folic acid, then there is another type of the anemia which is called as a megablastic anemia. Now, This folic acid is essential more during the time of pregnancy because it is required for the growth of the baby, because it is responsible also for affecting the certain levels of the purines and pyrimidines in our body. So that's why whenever there is a one another condition, if you say that the pregnant woman is taking a low level of vitamin B12, then it can be happen the baby after the birth would be having a either too low or either a too high body weight. So this can be affected. Now after then I will discuss the another term which is called as a pernicious anemia. So pernicious anemia, which is one of the problem due to the malabsorption or the low intake of vitamin B12, which is called as a cyanocobalamin. Now this vitamin B12 is a important, which is a water soluble vitamin which is required to the body for the synthesis of the cells. And if the number of RBCs is reduced in our body, that means if we feel that we are too much tired, if we feel that we get fatigued very easily, if we think so that our body color is pale, if we think so that we get pain like angina, we get a pain in the chest, it may be due to the deficiency of vitamin B12 in the body. So this is the one of the medical condition which is called as a pernicious anemia. So another is a type of hypoplastic anemia. So it is of two type, either aplastic or plastic type, or aplastic, that it is the condition in which there is a reduced number of the precursor cells, because we know that all these cells like RBCs, WBCs and the platelets, they are formed from they are formed from the pluripotent cells. Those pluripotent cells, they are called as a precursor cells from which all the other type of the cells are developed. And suppose if we suffer from the aplastic anemia, then they can affect to the number of RBCs which are present in our body. So that's why this is one of the medical problem, and we commonly use a one of the sign in case of aplastic anemia and we can easily fight against such type of anemia conditions. Now another than that, there is another condition which is called as a hemolytic anemia. So hemo means a protein and lytic means its breakdown. So sometimes, not always, hemolysis could be due to if there would be a excessive loss of blood from the body, and that excessive loss of blood may be due to the major injury. And in case of major injury, whenever there will be a excessive loss of blood, that can lead to the hypovolemia. And another condition which happens simultaneously is called as a congenital hemolytic anemia, which affect the body. And there are two type of the disorder which are being be correlated as a genetic disorder, that is called as a sickle cell anemia and thalassemia. So sickle cell, I already discussed, whenever a genetically we suffer from a deficiency of glucose 6-phosphate dehydrogenase, in that condition the shapes of the cell become like a sickle, and they cannot frequently travel from the one area to the another area, and sometimes they cause blood vessel choking, and due to this sometimes hypoxia, ischemia like injury may be happen, and it is one of the leading cause of death in the small children which are having a age around 7 to 12 years, because the RBC shapes become like a sickle, but on the another way, in case of normal RBCs, their shape is flexible. So this flexibility is not we happen here, and that's why it can leads to the death. After then, there is another condition which is called as a thalassemia. Now, in this condition, either our body is unable to produce a sufficient amount of proteins, which is called as a globin, because hemoglobin is consisted of a one of the porphyrin containing part, iron heme, and another is a globin, which is synthesized by the liver. Now, in case of deficiency of this globin, the level of hemoglobin is reduced, and there is a condition which is called as a thalassemia. Now, there is another condition which is called as a acquired hemolytic anemia. Now, this could be due to some chemical substances. Now, sometimes we take drugs which are required for the body in case of severe infections. I will give example of the sulfonamide, which always act in the body by inhibiting the PABA and by inhibiting the formation of the folic acid in our body. Now, see here, it has been a knowledgeable for us that sulfonamide are having a less tendency to inhibit the folic acid of which is of a normal type, and it inhibit more which is of a bacterial type. So that's why acquired hemolytic anemia is one of the problem. So next is called as a polycythemia. So polycythemia is the condition so in which the body makes a number of RBCs. Now, whenever the RBCs number is increased, sometime it can happen in a physiological condition, and sometime it can happen in a disease condition. Now, in case of physiological condition, I always give a one of the example to the students that whenever you move to the hilly area, so with increase in the height, the level of the oxygen start to reduce, and as physiologically our body start to produce a more number of RBCs, so that a body can compensate with the low level of the oxygen, which is called as a hypoxia. Now this is one of the physiological condition, but in case of pathological condition, what happen that there will be a ultimately reduced number of RBCs. It could be due to blood cancer, or it could be due to some of the medicines, a high intake of some anti-cancer substances. So that's why the polycythemia also affect the normal functioning. Another condition is called as a leukopenia. Now, in this case, they can be, because leukocytes are two type. They are granulocyte or agranulocyte depending upon the presence of the granules, and they are further be differentiated depending upon the type of dyes being used. That ester type or eosinophil, by the eosin, neutrophil never take any kind of dye. So this was the technique of a scientist Graham et al. So that's why he differentiated the different type of the cells in the body. Now, after then another medical condition which is called as a leukemia, that whenever our bone marrow is being captured by the cancer. Now see here what will happen if there would be any type of bone marrow cancer. There will be excessive productions of the cell from the bone marrow, and due to this there will be an increase in the WBC's number in our body, because two conditions are there. One, I have given example of dengue, that the problem where the WBC level decline than the normal limit, because in our body the normal range of WBCs is from 4,000 to 11,000 per cubic millimeter square of the blood. So that If its number is reduced, ultimately we are suffering from some medical problem or a disease conditions. And if its number is increased, again we can say this is due to the cancer or some other problem with the bone marrows. Now, next I will come to the another topic which is called as a coagulation, and it is a one of the important part of the body. Why? Because it is necessary to maintain the homeostasis. So a diagram which didn't indicate that what homeostasis is, but ultimately if we keep the temperature not too hot, not too cold, this is called as a homeostasis. Homeostasis, that mean heme the blood and stasis to heart, that to prevent the change. So in this case, if there will be excessive loss of blood from the body, the condition can be altered, and if there is a low productions of the cell in the body, condition can also be altered. So this is called as a homeostasis. Now see, here I have given an overview of homeostasis, that all the type of the blood cells, they help to maintain the homeostasis, but majorly the platelet play a big role because they prevent the excessive loss of the blood after the injury. So what we can say that the platelet, and likely I discussed that the RBC, they are equally required to the body for the oxygen carbon dioxide transportation, for maintaining the pH, for carrying the number of nutrients, and also the WBC, which is one of the big defensive power of the body, and the WBC which are be differentiated into the different type of the cells, likely some of the cells which are called as a lymphocyte, they are responsible for the release of the antibodies, so that our body can fight against any kind of the infectious condition. So leading to this, another cells which are called as a platelet, which form a hemostatic plug in the body, so that there will be a no excessive loss of the blood, because there are some clotting factor which also help to play an important role along with the platelets, so that they can form a plug at the particular area. Now the conditions can be two-sided. If there is a low level of platelet, it can be responsible for the internal injury, it can be responsible for the internal bleeding, which is also a critical condition. And if there is a too high number of platelet, it can be responsible for the high viscosity of the blood or coagulation of the blood. Sometimes in the blood vessels can cause choking of the blood, and due to this reason, many a time the coronary blood vessels of the heart, they are blocked. Many a time the small blood vessels in the brain, they get a stroke like condition. So always we can say that the platelet are important for this homeostatic actions. Now, these are some of the stages as concerning the pathological conditions, that how the hemostasis is play an important role. Now, there are three things. First is the vasoconstriction, another is the platelet plug formation, and third is the coagulation of blood. Now, why these three steps are important? Because whenever we get injury, the blood start to move out from the injured area, and whenever the injury is happen, as there are four type of the condition: rubor, tumor, color, dolor. So redness, bleeding, swelling, and heat loss would be there. So these four type of the signs which are appeared after the loss of the blood, they are being critical. Now at the simultaneous time, the histamine, which is a one of the amine which is present inside the blood, it is moved out at the injured area and act on its histaminergic receptor, which are of approximate 5 types, even though they are being be invented of 12 to 19 type, but still we know the function of 5 type of histaminergic receptor. Now, this histamine, which is released from the blood, it acts on the H1 histaminergic receptor and is responsible for the constriction of the injured area, which is called as a vasoconstriction. So this is the first response of the hemostasis. After then, whenever the constriction is happen, the platelet are also traveled to that area, and they found that they form a plug because the platelet membrane contain some type of receptors which are responsible for the joining of platelet or adhere the platelet with each other, so that so that a coagulum can be formed. Now, this coagulum which form a clot and prevent the further loss of the blood. Now see this vasoconstriction, which is very important, you can say, the one of the stage and one of the part of the injury, that the vasoconstriction due to the histamine play an important role. Now simultaneously, the activated platelets secrete serotonin and some other vasoconstrictory substances. And one of the vasoconstrictory substance is called as a endothelin, and it is released by the endothelium. And this endothelin, which is released by the endothelial layer of the blood vessel, it acts on the endothelin receptor and responsible for the constriction of the blood vessel to prevent the further loss of the blood. Now, here, if we say the platelet form a plug, not only the platelet also carries some fat globules along with that, and these all the substances, some protein, some clot like fibrin, a protein, and some platelet, they start to form a clump, and which is appeared in the form of a clot. So these are the three stages which I have mentioned here, how a body once get injury and blood starts to move out from the injured area. After then, how the platelet start to release or play their own role, and after then, how they become aggregate to prevent the loss. So these are the three steps which I have indicated here. Now the coagulation of the blood. It is equally important that the fibrin, which is a protein which is responsible for the clot formation, it is due to the conversion of fibrinogen to fibrin in the presence of a thrombin protein. Now, in this mechanism, the fibrin, which is a during the initial stage, which is a type of a fiber, we can say, it is a xylo fiber protein, and that protein which contain a fiber having a pale yellow color, these fibers are responsible for the formation of a insoluble plug, but with the time within few seconds, around in 60 to 80 or 120 seconds, these insoluble fibrin will become a hard, which is called as a fibrin, and which is called as a hard structure, and it form a complete layer over the injured area. So this is the how that the platelet initiate their function, and how fibrin activated form is present over the injured area and help to cover that injured area. So these are the steps that I have discussed with you. Now, coming to the coagulation and the clotting process, because I have discussed that not a single substance is responsible for the clotting. During the clotting, platelets are present, some proteins are present, along with fibrin is present, and this clotting sometimes may be less. It is due to the deficiency of one of the vitamin, which is called as a vitamin K. It is a type of fat soluble vitamin, and this vitamin is responsible for the synthesis of some of the clotting factors, the clotting factors like 2, 7, 9, and 10. So these factors which are synthesized in our body depending upon the presence of vitamin K. And if we suffer from deficiency of the vitamin K, ultimately we can say there would be a less clotting of the blood, and if there will be a less clotting of the blood, there will be an increase or excessive loss of blood, and that can be leads a physiological condition to a pathological insult. Now see here, not only all these factors, there is a one of the ion which is called as a calcium play an important task here, because calcium is one of the ion which is responsible for the platelet plug formation, as well as it also play a role during the coagulation of the blood by acting one of the common factors, so that the clot can form very easily. So here I have mentioned various type of the clotting factor which are present in our blood and which are a part of the clot formation, like factor 1 which is called as a fibrinogen, like factor 2 which is called as a prothrombin, like factor 3 tissue thromboplastin, because this is an important factor, because tissue thromboplastin can the level can easily be analyzed by the laboratory testing, and from that you can assume that what concentration of the thrombolytics, what amount of the fibrinolytics we have to administer the patient, because if we say that the coronary artery was blocked by the coagulum, by the clot, that what will happen? Firstly, there will be hypoxia. That means our the wall of our heart will be deficit from the oxygen, and this is hypoxia, and which is followed by ischemia. Ischemia means less availability of blood at the target area. Now that's why the pain which is originated on the chest side is called as a angina, and it could be a type 1, type 2, and prinzmetal angina. Now type 1 angina, which is a common form of angina, which can be happen during exercise, which can occur during the coitus, which can occur during the eating, which can happen during the walking, which can happen whenever we do a rigorous exercise. Now there is another type of angina which is called as an uncommon form of angina, and this type of angina most probably occur during the rest time, and sometime it is known to be a leading cause of the death. Another which was discovered by the scientist Prince Metal is known to be on the name of the scientist, which is called as a Prince metal angina. So if we found that patient was suffering from this type of problem, sometime the doctor used to slowly infuse some of the substance called as a thrombolytics and fibrinolytics. Now, this is important for the physician, for the doctor to be know the level of thromboplastin before injection of the fibrinolytics and thrombolytics. Now, the another factor which is called as a calcium ion, I already discussed that calcium not only a factor, calcium itself a ion, calcium itself a regulator for the number of mechanisms in our body. Starting from the release of hormone like insulin, it is stored in the vesicles, and vesicles become contracted by the release of calcium. And our muscles, they start to contract due to the presence of a calcium, and our blood cell start to form a clot due to the presence of calcium. So, what we can say, there is a no area of the body, there is a no cell of the body where the calcium will not be present. So, it is important part of the body. Next is a factor 5, which is called as a labile factor, which was discovered very silently, and after factor 7, which is called as a stable factor, and another is a factor 8, which is called as anti-hemophilic factor. Hemophilia, which is a one of the non-genetic disorder, that mean affecting the total number of RBCs and hemoglobin in the body, and it is having a concern with that, but it was found by the scientist to be anti-hemophilic. And after then factor 9, which was discovered by scientist Christmas and is known as a Christmas factor. It is also called as a plasma thromboplastin. Factor 10, stored power factor, then plasma thromboplastin, uh, antecedent factor, then factor 12. There is a Hagman factor on the name of the scientist, and the last factor, which is responsible for the formation of clot, is called as a fibrin stabilizing factor, because this is only the factor which help to stabilize the fibrin. Otherwise, during the initial time, the fibrin is present over the injured area in the soluble form, but due to the presence of this factor, the soluble form is converted into a insoluble form. Now, depending upon the pathway, because whenever we get injury or whenever injury will be happen, the two things occur simultaneously. One will be the extrinsic pathway, another will be the intrinsic pathway. So, what extrinsic mean? It will be the pathway or it will be the signaling mechanism which is initiated from the damaged site, which is initiated from the outer side, and it starts within a few seconds, in which there is a activation one of the enzyme which is called as a prothrombinase, which convert free prothrombin to thromboplastin, and in the presence of calcium and factor 10, the prothrombinase is become active, and it is active form is responsible to to cover the damaged part, along with the presence of a protein which is called as a collagen protein, because collagen is a type of cartilaginous cartilage, and because there are two type of cartilage, one is a collagen cartilage, another is a elastin cartilage, because our some of the body parts are still too elastic. Suppose if we say the tip of our nose, so our see we will see the lower part of our ears, these are too elastic due to the presence of some elastic cartilage. But in some area, the the muscles are tightly close to the skeletal system due to the presence of some protein which are called as a collagen protein. So this I have discussed here, that both extrinsic and intrinsic pathway, they play their important role, because during the extrinsic pathway, what happen, the thromboplastin is released, and which is responsible for the activation of the prothrombin, and simultaneously the platelets are responsible for the activation of the intrinsic pathway to activate the prothrombin. And this is very commonly important to know, that this process happen in a few number of seconds, not in a minutes, because the prothrombin which is activated by the external and by the internal pathway, it converts the inactive form of prothrombin to the thrombin, and ultimately It is responsible for the conversion of the fibrin from fibrinogen to form a fluid. So that's why I will discuss little bit about here about the fibrinolysis. That mean the substances, that mean the drugs, that mean the chemicals, that mean the agents which are used for the lysis of the fibrin, because the fibrin is a insoluble protein. If it form on the external area over the injured area, it would be too beneficial. But if it is formed in the inner side of the body, it is equally too harmful. So that's why such type of the fibrinolytic substance which can degrade the fibrin and which can open the blood vessel which was being choked by accumulation of this protein would be helpful to save the life of the patients. So number of the fibrinolytics which are commonly used, and one of the commonly used fibrinolytics is the altiplase, which is available and being used by the medical community to protect the human being life. So, formation of the hemoglobin, as previously I have discussed that hemoglobin is an important part of our blood, because the level of the hemoglobin, it varies from male to female. No, there is no any, you can say, a genetic problem that we can say that the females are having a low level of hemoglobin as compared to male, because the level of hemoglobin is affected by number of factors. It is affected by good nutrition, it is affected by if you are taking a good protein diet, it is affected if you do exercise daily. But it can be low because there is a difference between the level of hemoglobin with the one of the person who never do exercise and one of the person who frequently do exercise and is maybe a athlete person. So that's why whenever you do the exercise, the globin, which is a protein part of the heme, it is equally more synthesized by the liver, and the heme, which is inactive itself, but once it carry iron, and that is become active and is responsible to carry the oxygen. That's why if oxygen is present along the hemoglobin, with the hemoglobin or attached with the porphyrin ring of the iron, it is called as a oxygenated hemoglobin. Now those person who suffer from a low level of hemoglobin, frequently they they get some of the problem like fatigue in their body, like tiredness in their body, their their skin color sometimes would be yellow, and they will not be look too young. So that's why it is important we should we should eat a green leafy vegetable, and we can get a appropriate amount of the hemoglobin which is required. As from for the male, it is from 13 to 60 mg per deciliter, and for the female it is from 12 to 15 mg per deciliter. But in case of pregnancy, it is too much essential that the hemoglobin level should be nearly 12 to 13 mg per deciliter. So, it is just for the knowledge what would be happen if the level of hemoglobin during the pregnancy will be low, and if the level of hemoglobin during the pregnancy is reduced up to 6 and 7, and it can lead to hypoxia in the baby. It can cause heart failure of the baby, and the baby after the birth may would having a high weight. So the body will become fluffy. So that's why normally after the birth, the baby born with a weight of 3 kg to 4 kg is considered to be a good. But if the body is too fluffy but weight is too less, then it could be due to the lacking of the hemoglobin. So, structurally, we can see here that hemoglobin is consisted of a two chain, two alpha chain and two beta chains. So these chains are present in conjugation with the iron, and iron is present in conjugation with oxygen. So what you can say, all the three elements having a covalent interaction. Oxygen form a covalent interaction with iron, and iron form a covalent interaction with alpha and beta chain of the hemoglobin. So they constitute a molecule of the hemoglobin. Now, structure I have well discussed here, that hemoglobin, heme is a porphyrin element which contain an iron, and globin is a protein part which is released from the liver to the blood, and increase protein in the diet can lead to increase formation of the globin, and increase formation of the globin can increase the amount of hemoglobin. And if a person is having a good level of hemoglobin, then we can say it is essential to carry the oxygen. And whenever, if oxygen is not present in the hemoglobin, it shows a purple bluish color. And I always says to the student that you can imagine, if you see your hand, the blood which is present in your vein of the hand appeared like a purple blue, but after the injury, this purple blue color will become red because it comes in contact with the oxygen. Now, this was about the blood cells and clotting mechanism and hemoglobin. So, so this was the discussion about brief discussion about the blood and its component. Now, I will convey that the director, sir, of this institute will continue the presentation for the another session. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Shamsherji. So, first of all, good morning, everyone. I hope you are ready to listen to me. So, I will try my best to give the best to best related to the things which are required for the pharmaceutics. And today, I will try my best to discuss brief